Welcome into the PFF NFL Draft Show. It is part 2 of our NFC Draft Review. We already have the East and the North in the bag. You guys can check out that first episode. Today it's all about the South and the West. Hope you guys enjoy our breakdown. All right, let's go to the NFC South. The Tampa Bay Bucks. Starting with them, they made a move. They made 2 moves in the first round. They were sitting at 7. They traded back with the Buffalo Bills, allowed the Bills to go get Josh Allen, and they go get Vita Vea out of Washington. Overall, the Bucks, we gave them a good grade for this draft. Vita Vea at 12, slightly high for where we would have said. We had him about 18, 20 on the draft board, but I think you could honestly say the Bucks defensive line is the most improved in the NFL this offseason. Now with Vea at nose tackle, Gerald McCoy at 3 technique, JPP on the outside, Vinny Curry coming in.
Yeah.
I like what they're doing up front in Tampa Bay.
That defensive line looks fun. One of the other things that the analytics guys have been doing is trying to quantify trade value and who wins in these draft day trades. Guys that come up, guys that go down, and they've developed a model that predicts the percentage chance of you winning a trade. And really, the thing that stands out when we're looking at this is it's almost always the right move to trade down. Like, essentially, the only thing that offsets that is the quarterback. So
right, like the Jets lost that trade to the Colts. Unless Darnold becomes a top 12 quarterback, then they're okay.
And their percentage chance of winning that, I think, is like 30%, if I'm remembering that right. And that 30% is almost all the chance that Darnold pans out.
Right.
You know, that's basically the only thing that matters with that trade. So the logic behind all this is that the draft is still such a crapshoot that more rolls of the dice are better than few. You're going to get it right simply by weight of numbers. So anytime you're going to take it, I mean, we don't love taking Vita Vea this high because the question mark is, can he be a factor on passing downs in the NFL, which is the most important thing. But if you're going to do it, at least they traded back to pick up an extra pick and mitigate some of the concern there. So I like that pick overall.
Yeah, so go check out the draft guide. Has some great numbers on where he wins as a pass rusher, and I think it kind of unveils why I really like this fit next to Gerald McCoy. Gerald McCoy, that penetrator. Vita Vea can push the pocket. Next few picks, Ronald Jones in the second round. That fills a big need at running back. One of the best pure runners in this draft. We loved him as a pure runner. The question mark, though, we've talked about pass game left and right. Can he catch the ball out of the backfield? But if he can, just catch a check down and catch a screen, which I feel like is going to be in this Bucs offense that has weapons at receiver, weapons at tight end. There's not going to be a whole lot manufactured for the running back. They're not going to use their running back like a Saquon Barkley as a movable weapon.
They don't need him to do a whole lot, but we really haven't seen that he can do anything. I mean, he had 40 career targets at USC.
No, I get it.
And in that 40 targets, there were some ugly drops.
But you're going to be using him at, Jameis Winston, it's either going to be just a design screen for him that puts the ball in his hands where he's a good runner, as we said, or it's going to be Jameis is going to be working to those receivers, working to those tight ends, and it's just going to be a check down situation, catch the ball, and maximize the yardage. In that sense, I think he can at least be a reasonable receiver. He's a good runner, so I think that ends up being a pretty good fit there.
Yeah, I think so too. And then the second round, they went secondary twice.
I like both of the picks stylistically.
MJ Stewart and Carlton Davis, 2 different players that'll man different roles in that defense. Carlton Davis is the one big long corner in this draft that actually played all right, as opposed to all those other guys you made me watch that were terrible.
Come on, don't blame me. Blame the NFL.
Davis has some real press man skills, and I think he's going to struggle doing things other than that. But if you let him line up, press the guy at the line of scrimmage, and run man coverage all the way down the sideline, you are going to really struggle to fit the ball in beyond his wingspan because he's incredibly good at stopping that play. And the other guy, MJ Stewart, is a really interesting player that we liked, who reminded me a lot of Micah Hyde, Green Bay Packers, Buffalo Bills, safety corner, slot kind of hybrid guy. And he is, I think, the perfect player for where the NFL is headed, which is playing that slot role, understanding the value of it, and neutralizing those matchup weapons that typically play most of their snaps inside.
Yeah, so he had 3 really good years of grading playing in the slot. So I like the differences there. Carlton Davis, press guy. MJ Stewart, more of a slot guy. Add that to the mix with Brent Grimes, with Vernon Hargraves. Ryan Smith. So they're starting to piece together that secondary pretty well. They had Alex Kappa, developmental tackle, in the third, who brings the nasty, Sam.
Brings the nasty.
Brings the nasty. And then Jack Sitchie, I think, is the other notable pick, as, really battled injury throughout his career. Doesn't have a whole lot of time on the field, but when he played, really a spectacular all-around linebacker at Wisconsin. And, if he could stay healthy, he could do some damage in that linebacking core that Quan Alexander, Levante David pretty much locked in as starters. I thought Kendall Beckwith, he was one of our best rookies last year for 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And then really regressed back into what we thought he was, which was just an okay player. And I think Sitchie might have a chance to steal some snaps from Kendall Beckwith as long as he's healthy.
He's a lot like Alex Anzalone a year ago in terms of just a complete injury roll of the dice. He was drafted much lower than Alex Anzalone, which helps, but we're talking about a guy who has 737 defensive snaps over the past 3 seasons and just 388 over the past 2. Didn't play at all in 2017. He looked really good in 2016, but we're talking about if Sean Dion Hamilton was an injury concern before, Sitchie has significantly less playing time, and you just don't know. But if you're going to get him healthy again, you could get a steal.
Let's move on to the Atlanta Falcons. They kicked it off with Calvin Ridley in the first round, and I thought at 26 overall, that was beautiful. That was where our 7-round mock draft that we did 2 weeks ago, Ridley was on the board at 26. The Falcons GM for that sent me a message and was like, hey, do you like Ridley here? And I said, yes. Ridley combined with Julio Jones, you got the best route runner in the draft in Ridley, combined with Julio and what he can do, and Mohamed Sanu. I just love this fit for the Falcons.
I really do as well, because with Julio Jones there, Ridley doesn't need to be good at any of the things that he's not good at.
Right.
He doesn't need to be a contested catch guy, because Julio Jones can do that. He doesn't need to be the greatest hands catcher in the world, because he's going to blow people apart when it comes to route running and get wide the hell open, especially with Julio Jones taking the best attention defenses can give him. I think this is a fantastic draft pick and a great fit for Ridley. I think he is going to get really fantastic opportunities and looks in this offense.
Then with the second round, Isaiah Oliver. If you guys, again, if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're not, you can check out the YouTube channel, check out the Isaiah Oliver scouting report. We did 41 of them. Oliver was one of the 41. Ridley was one of the 41, of course. With Oliver, though, because he had the length and the good size, we said scheme fit, Seattle Seahawks, Atlanta Falcons. He ends up going to the Falcons in the second. I think that's good value for him, a guy that has the ability to kind of shut down the deep ball with that size and length, just kind of struggles with some of the shiftier receivers, kind of a classic Falcons/Seahawks corner.
Yeah, I think it's exactly where he should have gone. People were talking about him as a first-round pick, and I think because he is relatively scheme-specific, he inherently is less valuable than guys that can play in any scheme. And those are the guys that went in round 1. Oliver, though, what's really interesting is because he is scheme-specific and that scheme requires those big, long press corners, or at least covets them, he could be like the number 1 guy on Atlanta's board when it comes to corner. They may well have drafted their number 1 corner with the 58th overall pick in the draft, which for them would represent fantastic value. That's what's kind of interesting about this whole big board thing, and it depends on scheme. Scheme is obviously going to move guys around the board naturally, even if we were doing it. You said, forget an overarching, every person fits one kind of deal. If you were running this scheme, what would your big board look like now? And we would move it around, and guys like Oliver would go up if we're running this kind of defense. So that for them could be a fantastic pick as well in the second. So this is one of these drafts that I really like overall.
Yeah, a good fit there. Deadrin Sanat from USF, number 2 in the class in run stop percentage. You could find all his numbers in the draft guide. You love Ito Smith. You love Ito Smith? Is that right?
I like Ito.
You like him. The running back out of Southern Miss in the 4th. Russell Gage, they already said, would be more of a special teams type of player. LSU wide receiver in the 6th. He's got a couple spectacular catches on film. Maybe add some depth there as well. So especially those top 3 picks, those all fit, I think the depth needs, because the Falcons, they have a really good roster, top to bottom, and wide receiver depth, cornerback depth, definitely felt like a huge priority for me. And then, interior D-line depth. I think they hit all of them.
Ito Smith is the running back in this draft class that the analytics guys would be pointing to negate the Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara thing. It's the difference in production or potential production, if everything else is equal between Ito Smith and Saquon Barkley, is not going to be as big as the difference between the second overall pick and number 126, which is where Ito Smith is taken.
Yeah.
He is a fantastic receiver out of the backfield, did extremely well, even in receiving drills at the Senior Bowl, again, against tougher competition, can make people miss in a phone booth, just has an incredible amount of broken tackles, both as a receiver and a running back. Struggles a little bit running between the tackles for different reasons because he's a lot smaller than a guy like Saquon Barkley is, but they are really similar kinds of players. He isn't the same athletic freak and the same size as Saquon Barkley, but the point is, if you have an offense that has a great offensive line and weapons everywhere and is prepared to use these guys with the same kind of role, that's the value, not the actual guy fulfilling his part of that job.
We know Devontae Freeman, Tevin Coleman right there, but good teams are, again, it's a depth move, knowing good teams you can't keep all your players at some point and after year 4. You can't keep everyone. When Tevin Coleman's ready to walk, can Ito Smith step into that role?
And he can kind of split that role. He can do a bit of what both those guys can do in one player. So, yeah, I think that's a great pick.
All right, let's move on to the New Orleans Saints. They definitely had the best draft in the entire NFL last year.
Yeah.
I think the biggest curious move here was how much they gave up for their first-round pick, Marcus Davenport. And we like Marcus Davenport. I thought he was more of a late first-round type of player. Mike Renner thought he was more of a second-round type of player because he had to develop. But, look, we like him. He's very productive. He's powerful. There's a lot to like about Marcus Davenport. If you were just sitting at 14 and you picked him, it'd be like, all right, it's not a terrible pick. It's a little bit higher than we would have picked him. But to give up next year's first-round pick as well to go get him,
and even
it's a massive haul.
It is. And even if you just sat at 14, I think it would have made sense because we've talked before in the lead up to this draft, it is such a terrible edge class, and it was a terrible free agent group that I expected Marcus Davenport to get pushed up this draft because there just weren't that many people that could do it. What really surprised me was Harold Landry falling in the other direction, given those circumstances.
Right.
But if you had told me pre-draft that Marcus Davenport was going to go 14 overall, I would not have had any problems believing that. The idea that you had to give up a first-round pick next year, though, to achieve that is crazy to me.
So this feels like a move where you have the Saints, who were one freak play away from the NFC Championship, and really revamped their defense. You've got this older quarterback in Drew Brees who's still legit. This offense is going to move the ball. This is we're one player away from the Super Bowl type of move, but you went up and got a guy that needs a little bit of developing time, and first off, no team is ever just one player away from.
And it's not like it's the one position where you've got real problems. You know what I mean? If they had no edge rusher, if they were desperately in need of pass rushing presence, pass rushing pressure on the edge, and there was nobody on the roster that was doing it consistently, and they were one play away from the Super Bowl, then I get it. Then I would understand this idea of we need to secure one of these edge rushers or nothing else matters. It would still maybe be a questionable move, but I at least understand it. But Cameron Jordan was maybe the best edge rusher in the game last season, has been one of the best edge rushers in the game for the past few seasons, and you've started building around him. There are other guys there that are doing something. So the idea that we desperately need this guy, this is the difference, is I just don't understand.
Look, I don't mind the position. If you're drafting positions over players, I'm fine with edge because Okafor is still a question mark. We love Trey Hendrickson from last year. Cameron Jordan's great. So I don't mind the position pick, but it's everything that they gave up. That's the big question mark. But they need him to really pan out for that to be worth it.
The logic that this is the guy that is that is the difference between us winning the Super Bowl or not doesn't make sense to me unless that position is a clear hole and need.
Right. I hear it.
Which it isn't.
Rest of the draft, some guys we really liked, some maybe not. Tre'Quan Smith, I like that in the third round. He's got really good body control, one of the more efficient downfield receivers last year. I mean, he goes to a situation where if he gets a chance to play in New Orleans, I'm sure he'll be productive with Drew Brees. I really like his skill set. Rick Leonard was a bit of a head-scratcher in the fourth. He's really struggled in pass protection at Florida State. He wasn't in this mix of developmental offensive tackles. He didn't even make that list for us of developmental guys, so that was a question mark. I thought Natrell Jamerson was maybe one of the better pure free safeties in this draft. Really an excellent player when he's got his eyes on the quarterback. I don't mean to bring it up, but that Marcus Williams play, that's kind of like the play that he's good at.
Okay.
You know, when he's got his eyes on the
They've
quarterback.
upgraded for that play.
For that one play, if you're one play scouting. Marcus Williams is still awesome, by the way. I just want to
Yeah, but next year they're going to take him off the field for that last play and put in.
So he's going to be our Hail Mary safety, essentially. And then I'll let you discuss Boston Scott.
Yeah. 6th and 7th round, I think they did some good things. Boston Scott running, but they went local as well. Louisiana Tech and LSU.
They did.
The 6th and the 7th. Boston Scott is fun. He was, I think, the 3rd highest graded running back at PFF last season. He's tiny, though. He's like 5'6", claims 200 pounds. If he is anywhere near 200 pounds, I'd be kind of surprised. But
are you calling him a liar?
No. I'm suggesting his listed weight is generous and possibly the result of faulty equipment.
I wish you weren't a liar.
But he is fun. He can break tackles. He's got a ridiculous amount of yards after contact for such a small guy. Has an incredible jump cut that busts him into open space. Is a pretty good receiver. I'm kind of bummed that he went to a team like New Orleans who already has a loaded backfield and Alvin Kamara, and the chances of him kind of making a major impact.
They always find a way to get their running backs
on
the field. Though.
So there's a chance that he still makes an impact some way. And then Will Clapp, the center from LSU in the 7th, is a really nice value move as well. One of our kind of steals of the draft. I think those two guys really helped this draft class.
Yeah, I like it. I like the way they finished off with some of those picks. When you evaluate the Saints draft, though, and the reason why trading up is so risky, Marcus Davenport needs to satisfy the value. He needs to be just as valuable as their first rounder that they gave up this year and the first rounder that they gave up next year. Very, very difficult to do to actually justify that. Carolina Panthers next up. We called it average across the board, and I think that's about it. Just a bunch of guys who went in a range that was reasonable for us. How's that?
Yeah, that seems fair.
DJ Moore, a changing of the guard when it comes to receiver style in Carolina. DJ Moore, speed, some shiftiness to get open, not necessarily the 6'4" monster that they've been recruiting in Carolina.
No, they're finally looking
in the Cam Newton era.
They're finally looking to get wide receivers that can just get open, as opposed to are huge and can't be overthrown, or only run the short underneath stuff that Cam Newton can't make a mess of. This is the right strategy. Interestingly, they were at number 24 and had their pick of all the wide receivers in this draft class, which doesn't happen very often.
Right. Historically, you'd say, okay, based off the way they've tried to build their receiver core in the past, it might be a Cortland Sutton. It might be this bigger, long body receiver. But, you suggested this a few years ago, right? Or a few months back, where it's like they used to get the big guys that Cam Newton can't overthrow. He's still able to overthrow them. Then they started to get these shiftier underneath guys like Christian McCaffrey and Curtis Samuel, these movable chess pieces. Now you have, if you go back to 2015, Cam's MVP season, he didn't have as many big receivers on the field.
Yeah.
And, he was awesome.
Look,
he was just hitting open receivers.
Just get the best receiver, and that's going to make the biggest difference to Cam Newton's play is get the guy that's open the most, because those are the easiest plays. So with their choice of every receiver in this draft class, they went with DJ Moore as the best available option. I don't hate that. We didn't have him as our number one guy, but we had those top 5 all really close together. And I can easily see the argument for DJ Moore being the number one guy, particularly with the quarterback situation that he was dealing with in college at Maryland. He makes some fantastic plays, some spectacular catches, but he's also got that ability to get open and make real impact after the catch. He's got that incredible Percy Harvin kind of instant move once he hits the ground.
Love how he gets up the field. I absolutely love it. I mean, if you just look at Yak guys now, between him and McCaffrey, Curtis Samuel, if he's on the field and healthy, it's creating those easier yards. I mean, if you sum up Cam Newton over these last few years, not a whole lot of easy throws, not a whole lot of easy stats, easy yards after the catch or whatever. And he does have an accuracy issue. I mean, you can see it in the QB annual. Just check out his accuracy numbers. Throw for throw, he's not as accurate as these other guys. But the one thing that does bring accuracy together a little bit, it's easier to hit, believe it or not, open receivers.
Yes.
And even an inaccurate quarterback is going to hit those at a higher percentage of the time. So part of it's the, Cam's inaccuracy is the fact that he's got to throw 15-yard tight window
So
throws
this is the thing.
much.
Look, we are statistically proving what we've been saying for a while, which is the best strategy to mitigate an inaccurate quarterback is to get them guys who will get open more, because that has a better statistical impact on a quarterback's accuracy than the statistical chance of a wide receiver winning a contested catch situation.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is the other option.
Yep.
So Carolina went with that first way, which is let's just get a whole bunch of guys that are fantastic at contested catches and have a greater catch radius because they're so tall. But the problem is those guys don't get open, so constantly you're throwing contested catch situations. And those guys don't win those very often because statistically, even the best receivers when it comes to contested catches don't actually win them at a great rate. Alternatively, you can get guys that get wide open a lot more, and you're giving him easier throws to make. And even if he misses some of them, it's statistically a much better kind of inroad into that inaccuracy than the other way around. So
Absolutely
we're
is.
proving that stuff.
Round 2, Dante Jackson, LSU, quickness, speed. He's got it all. Perfect.
Quickness, speed.
Yeah, that was
Yep.
that. Slot player at the next level.
Well, here's the thing, right? So in the second round, they take a guy who is a small, undersized corner, but incredible speed, quickness, who was largely played outside. And then the third round, they take a big corner who was played inside. So they might have taken their opposite body types for what they typically should be playing. So I'm going to be curious to see how the Panthers deploy those two guys. Do they move Rashawn Golden from Tennessee outside to be their perimeter corner because he's over 6 foot, and say to Dante Jackson, you're under 6 foot, you play the slot. This is how this works in the NFL. Or do they say Golden has been the slot guy, he's going to stay the slot guy, and we're going to give Dante Jackson a chance to play outside because he's got the quicks, he's got the speed, he's done that. He's played inside and outside at LSU. So let's see how that works. I'm kind of curious to see what they do with that.
Yeah, Golden played outside and inside, but he was very good on the inside, and we've seen, again, you can see it on ProFootballFocus.com, the work that the analytics team has done to say, if you're projecting slot corners at the next level, find guys who played slot corner well at the college level.
Mm-hmm.
It's the easiest way to project them. Though Jackson's skill set certainly does scream more slot corner, even though he hasn't done it.
Well, what's also interesting about this is that I think Dante Jackson is not extremely, he's, I think, scheme specific in terms of he needs to be in a man coverage scheme, because that's what he does really well. That quickness allows him to mirror receivers.
Right.
He's got the pace to be able to do it off or in press coverage. He didn't seem to have a great feel at all for zone coverage. Just didn't have that natural understanding of what's going on, how to play it. So the
Panthers trying to play more man these last couple of years, right?
So now they need to be playing a
Right.
lot more man because those are man cover guys.
The only other notable pick for me, I guess a couple, but Marquise Haynes was a guy who was actually better as a true freshman. There was a point where he looked like this ascending edge who would be this future first or second round pick, and it just never really panned out for him, but I think he's at least worth a look to see if he can recapture that. A little bit undersized. Jermaine Carter did not do well at linebacker for Maryland last year from a grading standpoint, but he has a couple previous years of grading extremely well, especially in the run game. I was a little surprised to see him go in the 5th round based off of what he did last year, but he at least has a couple previous years of pretty good production. All right, let's move on to the NFC West. We're almost there, Sam.
God.
NFC West, San Francisco 49ers. I had an epiphany just before the draft because I kept giving the 49ers edge rushers and, trying to figure out where they fit. And I was like, wait, are they on this McGlinchey bandwagon? They feel like a team because there's not a whole lot of tackles in this draft. People were talking about McGlinchey going a little bit higher than where people expected. A lot of people had him at 15 to 20 on their draft boards. And I thought McGlinchey could be a guy there. And at the very least, he, steps in at left tackle or right tackle down the road. But they just made a spot for him at right tackle. Joe Staley's at left tackle. They trade Trenton Brown to the New England Patriots. McGlinchey looks like he's slated to start right at right tackle. I think it's a good pick.
I just think it's nice that they now have a pair of starting tackles from the same high school graduating class in Joe Staley and Mike McGlinchey. Both.
I'm just glad this joke will never die.
35-year-old prospects. It's a nice symmetry they've got now in the offensive
Staley can
line.
learn a lot from McGlinchey and his experience. I think that's a key part of this whole move. McGlinchey's a good fit for their outside zone scheme. Could become the best pass blocking tackle in the draft. The highest graded run blocker in the nation at tackle last year, 2 straight years. 3 straight years in the top 10 as a run blocker. I really like him, even at 9.
Yeah, and they've done some fun things in coverage then later on down this draft. They got Fred Warner, linebacker out of BYU. They got DJ Reed, cornerback / safety out of Kansas State. And then Tavares Moore, safety / cornerback out of Southern Miss. All those guys are interesting because there's a sort of position question mark with all of them. Fred Warner played this kind of overhang, walkout linebacker role in college that doesn't really exist in the NFL. So those guys almost all have fantastic coverage skills because they're essentially sort of slot corner linebacker hybrids. But the question mark becomes, how does that translate to the next level where they suddenly have to play between the tackles and they're dealing with offensive linemen coming to block them and all this kind of stuff? They're dealing in much tighter quarters with less space to work in. So that's sort of Fred Warner's question mark, but I think he's a really talented player. Tavares Moore was the guy you were talking up all the way through the pre-draft process. Sounds like he's going to be moving to corner at the next level. A guy who's, 6'1", 200 pounds-ish.
I'm not surprised knowing, the Niners come for the Seattle pedigree,
Yeah.
their defensive scheme. They've been known to just grab these 6'1" athletes and turn them into corner. And it's not like he didn't do that at Southern Miss, whether it was playing a quarter safety role where he'd have to line up against corners or against wide receivers or just playing a little bit of traditional corner. He's done it. And even in our scouting report said, look, he hangs with receivers pretty well for a safety. So you don't say that often about safety. So I think if that's at least worth a look, given the positional value, if he lands as a more traditional safety, that's not bad either. He was just outstanding from a production standpoint, then crushed his pro day running it around 4.3.
Yeah, then you've got DJ Reed, one of the smallest corners in this entire draft class, 5'9", 188, but had one of the best PFF grades in the nation. Yep. Has 2 seasons of excellent grading, graded well against the run despite small stature. Had really good numbers, really good play. I just didn't see how he could play at the next level without being moved into the slot. It sounds like they're going to move him to free safety, which is something I hadn't considered when I was looking at DJ Reed.
Well, you should have.
I know.
You need that traditional free safety, and I think that's worth a look there.
So the 49ers essentially drafted 3 coverage players there that could all be switching positions at the next level.
Yeah, that is classic Seattle as well. 2 wide receivers to watch. Second rounder Dante Pettis, really good against press, nifty footwork. 9 punt returns in his career, NCAA record. I think he's just a good feel for route running, finding open holes against zone. Solid player, a little bit higher than I would have taken him in the second round, but I think he could be a productive receiver at the next level. And then Richie James in the 7th was outstanding in 2015 and 16. Battled injury, wasn't nearly as good last year. He might be a little redundant to Trent Taylor, who's on the field, already on the roster as this shifty slot receiver. That's James's type of skill set, though, and I think he could be a productive NFL player as well.
They also drafted Kentavious Street, edge defender-ish, out of NC State in the 4th round, a guy that blew his knee out in the pre-draft process working out for a team. Most people were taking him off their draft board. People were dropping him out of the draft entirely because of that. Even before that, we had him as a relatively low-round guy because we weren't entirely sure what to make of him.
Right.
I think he reminds me a little bit of James Harrison, except he's bigger. He's got that stocky, short, brute force power kind of deal. And I think he's best almost moving inside, where he just destroys people with quick. He's got the quickness to win inside, but the power to hold up as a pass rusher there, which makes him, for the 49ers, their 28th 3-technique interior pass rusher.
How many 3 techniques do they have now? That's
a lot.
28? There's a lot. That's
well, they've got, 3 first-round draft picks consecutively.
Armstead might not see the field at all.
You've got Armstead, Buckner, Solomon Thomas. They signed Sheldon Day. They've now got Kentavious Street. That's 4 right off the bat. Who else have they got? They've got at least another one.
That's my secret scheme of having 7 3-techs just lined up over the guard, and they all just rush.
Yeah, like a column. Like that Michigan play where they all line up in a column and then eventually shift out. You're going to do that, except you're not going to have a shift. They're just all going to plow straight through the B-gap, one after the next.
It'd be unstoppable at the next level. I'm glad the Niners are carrying forth my defensive scheme, the B-gap attack or something like that.
You need a better name again. I'm not sure why I'm shocked by that. But
all right, moving on. Arizona Cardinals, NFC West. They make a move. Look, I'm impressed with what they did because Josh Rosen was number 3 on our draft board among quarterbacks. Had him as a top 10 type of player. If you're the Cardinals, coming into the draft, you're sitting at 15 overall, picking at 15. You need a quarterback just as badly as the Bills, the Jets, the Giants, and the Browns, maybe the Broncos. And you get, at least in our world, one of our top 3 guys. To me, that's a huge win, being able to do that. They had to trade up to 10 to secure Josh Rosen, who was the 4th quarterback off the board in the draft. I thought that was a great start for the Cardinals.
Yeah, people were talking before the draft that if one of these quarterbacks was going to start sliding into the middle of the first round, it would be Josh Rosen. And the Cardinals jumped to the right spot in the draft to make it happen. They were going to need to get ahead of Miami, probably at number 11, who were the first team in this list for a while, who might take a quarterback if he was still there on the board. You know, they've got Ryan Tannehill, but you can't be sure they'd be wedded to him if one of these top prospects was still available. So they jumped up to the right spot, number 10, got themselves their franchise quarterback of the future, a guy who is inconsistent and has had some concerns with his play in college, but they don't have to start him right away. They've got Sam Bradford in the building for at least the first game. They've got Mike Lennon there to take over for when Sam Bradford inevitably injures himself in the first game.
If we know anything about Bradford, that first game will be spectacular.
Amazing.
And then he'll get hurt.
Yes. So Mike Lennon's there to take over, so they still don't need to put Josh Rosen on the field for a while.
I disagree with that part, though. Rosen will see the field immediately. He's ready to play at the NFL level.
You think he's going to start over Sam Bradford?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. No. You drafted him to play football.
Yeah. Not right now.
He's different. No, because he doesn't need the development time.
Of course he does.
Like some of these other guys. He just goes. Rosen just goes. He's playing.
He needs to stop throwing terrible interceptions.
Yeah, well, you're not going to learn that on the bench. You learn that on the field.
Really?
He does need to do that. And check out the rest of the Rosen breakdown in the draft guide, because it does kind of break down some of that boom or bust nature to his game, where we've compared him to Eli Manning or Jameis Winston because the highs are high, the lows are low. He does need to cut back on those, but I do like the pick. He's a guy that you can win with. And given where the Cardinals were at 15, the fact that they got Rosen, I think, is a major win for them. I liked Christian Kirk as far as the fit with Rosen's game in the second round. We still had him as more of an early third-round pick. But again, these receivers all over the place as far as, perceived value and where true value was and all that fun stuff. But he's like a vertical slot threat. He's not exactly Doug Baldwin, but when you look at Doug Baldwin's game out of the slot, you think getting up the field, challenging down the field a little bit. I think that's where Christian Kirk can really, win. And I think that's where Rosen wins, in between the numbers, seam routes, intermediate stuff. And I think Kirk can be a nice fit for him there.
Little nugget about Christian Campbell, 6th-round cornerback they drafted out of Penn State. There was one corner that was absolutely ridiculous at the Senior Bowl, and that was Christian Campbell. He was the reason for 7 incompletions in one-on-one drills, which was the highest of any cornerback during that week of practice. He had fantastic grades when we graded every rep of the Senior Bowl practices.
Also in the draft guide?
Yes. His college tape and is not that spectacular a prospect, but that's interesting. Like a week of practice against the top receivers in the nation, and he absolutely dominated then. So I think that's a kind of interesting note that to have on a 6th-round guy who, otherwise is just a sort of throwaway draft pick. There's something there.
Also needed to attack the offensive line. They did that in the 3rd round with Mason Cole. Center out of Michigan, played some tackle, always seemed to grade fairly well, add some depth up front there. Another one of those just mid-round developmental offensive linemen, but one of the ones that we liked more than some of the others that went around that range. We went above average for that draft for the Arizona Cardinals. I think they did very well with what they had from a pick standpoint. Los Angeles Rams, speaking of, what did you have from a pick standpoint, did not make a pick until number 89 in the entire draft. I'm usually not for filling needs in the draft, but when you're drafting this low, you're the Los Angeles Rams, you spent so much draft capital on getting Brandon Cooks, on getting Marcus Peters, on getting Aqib Talib, and really rounding out this roster with just stars. This did feel like a draft where you need offensive line depth, you needed edge rushers, and you needed these certain positions, you needed linebacker, and they attacked all those positions in this draft without necessarily reaching. So I thought it was a solid draft for the Rams in some names that could really contribute, starting with Brian Allen, center of Michigan State, in the 4th round.
They didn't pick until 89 overall in this draft and still wound up with 11 draft picks.
Yeah.
That's quite impressive.
Yeah, and they've got some interesting 6th and 7th rounders. Justin Lawler in the 7th round, who had one of the highest edge rush grades for us last year, but he's just not a good athlete. But again, that's one of those late rounders who's productive, not a good athlete. Let's just see how he pans out. That's a guy that I would take a shot on. I like that.
There's a lot of interesting players in this draft. John Kelly, running back out of Tennessee, another tiny running back, but is a guy I could easily see having a reasonable impact as a change of pace guy.
Oh, absolutely. I like Kelly a lot.
Todd Gurley. Okoronkwo, the edge defender from Oklahoma, he's another guy who, if he was bigger, would immediately be 3 rounds higher up in this draft. Has been incredibly productive. Was the Big 10.
And we still called him a second
round pick. No, Big 12. Big 12, not the Big 10.
You screwed that up in
Fixed
one of our
this
videos.
time, though. Big 12 player of the year. And really, he's also, because a lot of his issue is just being short as opposed to small, there are offensive tackles that inherently struggle with that.
Yeah.
Tall offensive tackles. Look, if you were trying to block me, I would inherently have a leverage advantage.
I have good knee bend.
Is all I'm saying. There are guys, I can't remember who it was, somebody at the Senior Bowl, their entire story was basically, it might have been Tyrell Crosby, could block everybody except Okoronkwo, and then he just couldn't block him at all. There are guys that he's going to be able to do that to at the next level, and in the 5th round, that's an absolute steal.
Yeah, especially in this 3-4 scheme, even though it's all a hybrid under Wade Phillips. I think that's a perfect fit for him. So I love that value. Micah Kaiser can run around, make some plays. Joseph Noteboom, another one of those developmental tackles who's, pretty good.
And that's a good fit as well, because you've got Andrew Whitworth there, who is starting to slow down, it looks like. So you should at least have a year to develop Joseph Noteboom. You shouldn't need him to start.
Develop Noteboom at tackle. Develop Brian Allen at center behind John Sullivan. Micah Kaiser could see some early down linebacker snaps. He's a little bit better against the run than he is in coverage. Okoronkwo could see some snaps because the Rams' edge rush, they're so good rushing from the interior, but their edge rush group's one of the worst in the NFL, if not the worst. John Kelly spelling Todd Gurley. Could see him stealing some carries. And then Trevon Young and Justin Lawler, 2 of the other edges that they added, could see some time. So, look, it's for what they had.
It's a pretty good draft.
It is. It's pretty good. So, impressive job by the Rams, even without 1st and 2nd round picks. And let's wrap this up with the NFC, with the Seattle Seahawks. And nothing had me, I just didn't know which way to turn here when they drafted Rashad Penny in the 1st round. I was doing the live SI show, and as this pick was coming through, the other set, there was 2 sets. Mike and I were on one set, and the other set was Burt Breer and a couple other guys, Andy Staples, discussing these picks. And Burt Breer's going on and on about, man, big shock. Rashad Penny goes. I mean, this is against all what the NFL was saying. This was nobody had Rashad Penny as the number 2 running back. Where's Darius Geis? Where's Sony Michel? Where's Nick Chubb? Where are these other guys? And we're over there on set B going like, hey, guys, did you read the draft guide? Rashad Penny's our number 2 running back and a late 1st round pick.
If you check out, on our website, you'll find an article by me saying that Rashad Penny is absolutely worth a 1st round pick. He's a 1st round talent at running back. If you watch the video that myself and Mike did on Rashad Penny, our YouTube video, both of us suggested that he might actually be a better running back than Saquon Barkley in this draft class. So he is not.
I'm glad you said that in public, because secretly
we hedged it.
You did have me record a video on like March 20th.
Yeah.
And it's like, hi, it's March 20th. I'm declaring Rashad Penny is going to be better than Saquon Barkley. And it was very well hedged, just in case it happens. And then you went out. I like how you went out on a limb.
Yeah,
he
is really good. Yeah. So I'm glad to see that at least somebody else out there thought that he was at least the 2nd best running back in this group. And it's interesting. They were using the same data. They were talking up all of his yards after contact data that we've been harping on about for the last
John Schneider
few weeks.
in the actual press conference was talking about his yards after contact. We've been talking about yards after contact in general. Most missed tackles forced in the class. Yards after contact when he's hit behind the line of scrimmage being the best in the class. So a lot to like about Rashad Penny. But if we're going to harp on running back value in the 1st round, we have to bring it up a little bit here. It's not. So here's the thing, though. Part of the thing that makes Saquon Barkley so bad is because of the slotting of the money and the value and the fact that it's going to be an $18 million deal.
Number 2 versus number 27.
Right. So as you get to the late first round, it's not as bad to take a running back. And actually, it's probably a decent strategy because the fifth-year option is solid. The question with the Seattle Seahawks, though, this is not the same roster they've had in recent years. So when you talk about positional value just from a production standpoint, still need more edge rushers, corners, receivers. I mean, they still have so many holes, offensive line, of course, compared to what they've had in recent years.
Also,
is it too much of a luxury pick?
All of that data stuff suggests that the bigger impact in terms of producing yourself an excellent running game is the blocking. So even if you want to address your running game, you're way better off achieving that by finding better blockers to pave the way for whatever running back you put back there than you are drafting the guy that is the first-round talent at running back. Because, again, especially in this draft, the difference between Rashad Penny and Geis, say, who is our 6th-ranked running back, is minimal. It's small. Those guys are all pretty close together. So either you take Penny in the first round or you try and come back and take a guy like Geis in the second, having brought in a first-round offensive lineman that might have a far better impact in terms of improving his ability to run the ball.
Yeah, so I was torn on that pick. I thought it was, nice to see our number 2 running back go off the board, but certainly had, some questions as far as other places that they could have attacked. 3rd-round pick, Rasheem Green, is one of those guys. Now, this is attacking the pass game. He's one of the few potentially interior pass rushers in this class. He could play a little edge, play a little interior. He can get after the quarterback. Really did struggle against the run, especially against Notre Dame. Will Dissly in the 4th round, tight end. He's more of a blocking tight end. And then Shaquem Griffin goes in the 5th round. The question mark there, of course, Sam, not necessarily the hand, but how do you use him? Is he an edge at the next level? He is an undersized edge or a developmental linebacker prospect? Or is he a safety for them?
Well, that's possible. The biggest thing, I think, for him being drafted to Seattle is not that he gets to reunite with his brother as teammates again and all that. It's that he goes to a team that has already deployed the Bruce Irvin game plan with Bruce Irvin. So,
great point.
If it was me, I think his best situation is playing off-the-ball linebacker for the first 2 downs in base defense, and then you find a way to get him rushing the passer as a true edge rusher in obvious passing situations. And the Seahawks have already done that with Bruce Irvin. Now, I understand Bruce Irvin is a significantly larger player than Shaquem Griffin, but I think that is what he does best. He is at his best rushing the passer. There's just no way you're going to be able to play him there every down at 220 pounds, so you're going to need to have him split roll somewhere. Whether it's that, whether they even find a way to get him playing defensive back for the first 2 downs and then kick him down to an edge rusher, almost like a Derwin James.
He is the size of he's a safety size
they
for
have,
the Seattle scheme.
You see him all the way through the draft weekend. He's standing there with his brother. It's, twins. It's the family thing. They're the same size. Like, one guy is carrying a little bit more,
belly weight?
Some weight to him, but they're basically the same body type. One of these guys is a cornerback. The other one was a college edge rusher. That's what you're dealing with here. You're understanding that the thing that he does best is rush the passer, but he's doing it in a defensive back's body. How do we square that circle?
Yeah, I'll be interested to see exactly how they use him. A couple other notable picks. Michael Dixon, the punter in the 5th round, the best punter that we've graded in 4 years because we usually don't grade college punters all that well. Most college punters aren't even making NFL-type punts. Michael Dixon's been good, and we wrote about him. What? They're all rolling out and stuff.
I don't know. Yeah, it's just, the NFL throws thing is one thing, but now we've got NFL punts.
Yeah, we're going to have an NFL punts metric.
Oh, God.
So Dixon's pretty good. We have a whole write-up on him at ProFootballFocus.com. And then Jamarco Jones, a guy that we had as maybe a borderline first-round pick at offensive tackle. They get him in the 5th. And, again, in our world, that's a good pick because, you need to attack the offensive tackle position, whether it's right tackle, whether it's eventually replacing Dwayne Brown. And that could be a really nice pick for the Seahawks.
I don't really understand that slide at all, unless they just watched the first play in his reel, which would make me not draft him.
First play in our reel was a disaster. But Mike Renner called it the prettiest pass set in this class. I believe that.
The prettiest pass set in this class.
One.
So the thing that concerns me a little bit about Jones is that I have heard that they are planning on installing him as the backup left tackle to Dwayne Brown. Whereas what they desperately need to do is to get Jermaine Ifedi off the field at right tackle And this would seem
Or
like
maybe
quite
a
an obvious
guard.
way of doing that.
Maybe a Fetty at guard.
Well, okay, but off the field at right tackle is what I said.
No, I hear you. Oh, yeah.
So Jamarco Jones would see, at the very minimum, why would you not give him competition at right tackle and see if Jones is a dramatically better player right out of the gate?
I'm
And
assuming the
if he
NFL
is, then
didn't
put
think
him
that he was as polished and ready to go as we did.
Possible.
But again, it could be a steal. He didn't grade off the charts for us, 85.5 last year, but he was solid, and it was more eyeball test for us that had him a little bit higher compared to some other guys.
Yes. Also, not grading all that high is dramatically different to grading where Jermaine Ifedi did, which is 48.6.
Oh, I get it.
So there's an awful lot of room to get better than that.
Ifedi also graded really poor in college, especially compared to other first-round picks. We did not.
And
like
we've
that
been
pick.
saying the whole, our mantra, just creep back toward average. If he's even below average, he's better than who they have at right tackle.
Oh,
right
yeah,
now.
and what they've rolled out there at left tackle before
Yes.
Dwayne Brown was there. So I think that'll do it. With the NFC, that's Seattle, and we're going to do the AFC as well. We'll go team by team. As I said earlier, all of this information, if you want even more information, data, scouting reports, it's all in the PFF draft guide. That's all a part of Edge or Elite. You sign up for either package, and it's just a part of the entire package. Of course, Elite is our best package. That is the one that includes premium stats, which is going to be getting an overhaul this summer. I promise it'll be worth it. The best football product on the market, Sam. So go and check it out at join.profootballfocus.com and see if you'd rather have Edge, rather have Elite, because all of this stuff is in there. We've had a lot of fun covering the draft. We've got a little bit more to do. Thanks for tuning in today.